one the other. While the vibrant, strong sunflower is recognized worldwide for its beauty,
flowers generally is life. It's good to have flowers everywhere. They are wonderful. If you have a flower in your house, it shows that you are living healthy. Because if your house is stuffed and when you have a flower there, it tell you there's something wrong with your house. Like I have a flower in my house that actually showed me that my house was stuffy. I need to open up. So flowers are very good.
it is also an important source of food. Sunflower oil is a valued and healthy vegetable oil, and sunflower seeds are enjoyed as a healthy, tasty snack and nutritious ingredient to many foods. Once the flower heads are empty of seeds, they can be converted into disposable scrubbing pads for jobs too tough for your cleaning tool. Planning to clip a few to display in a vase, if you wait until the afternoon, they may wilt.
When there's a child out there that's not getting the same that your own child is getting, the difference will tell, and there will come a time in the society where that child is going to take its pound of flesh.
Where you can actually, everything from watching a program with the child, you can start up the conversation from something on the TV and say, oh, you know.
For me, it's like, hurry up with this business. And the other one said, Auntie, it's not about me, it's about the guys. They're not ready to marry.
Yes. If she wants to ask something, no, I know my mother very well. In fact, the most interesting one is when I put up pictures on WhatsApp, you know, Snapchat filters.
Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan begins two-day official visit to Nigeria.
Petroleum Industry Act implementation scraps DPR, PEF, and PPPRA.
This vehicle is assembled in Nigeria in the old Volkswagen of Nigeria assembly plant.
Shares in order as Nigeria unveils capacity to produce electric and gas-powered vehicles.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss globalization and the impact on domestic vaccine production.
All right, the unfortunate onset of COVID-19 then scramble for early vaccine production and access to doses, top for many nations as the ultimate game changer in the globalization of public health.
Yes, indeed, Claire. Now, the story of global vaccine production for many today unfolds the demonstration by governments and institutions in addressing the complexities towards a commitment to public health matters.
Now, these complexities show bother on many parameters, from containing emerging or re-emerging diseases today. And this process is impacting on how everyone is pushing for continued relevance in addressing the heavy burden on health and the economies as well.
But it's been very well established that not all governments and institutions have the same capacity to play evenly in the globalization arena, to engage and then impact on vaccine production.
And there are also insinuations and suggestions on the kind of equilibrium to policies from developed nations, issues of developing countries having lesser access to the acquisition and, of course, production of vaccines, to mention just a few.
Now, with increased need for vaccine production, we have now had the theories that counteracting forces have been unleashed and are at work, and where the missing gaps are over integrating matters on addressing globalized diseases, vulnerabilities, and vaccination?
So can we make bold to say today that there is that increased challenge to globalization when it is matters concerning public health policy and, of course, practice? How do we mainstream matters and integration requiring a shift in public health? These are some of the developments that have formed, of course, triggered our choice of discourse on today's edition of the program. And guest on the topic, of course, on globalization and its impact on vaccine production, not just production, the whole chain of vaccine production, distribution, and of course, usage. And it's on this note I welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria midweek session live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I am Claire Adilabu Abdul Razak.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Claire to also welcome you to the program, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, further context for our conversation today centers around the many diseases that we are grappling with. Take Lassa fever, for example, which is a yearly occurrence. You can also take a look at cholera, which this year has killed thousands of persons. There is continuous talk of expecting vaccines to be shipped into the country. And the question that many persons are asking is, where is our capacity to produce our own vaccines for use in country? And of course, we have also seen the nationalism playing out with regard to the COVID-19 vaccines around the world. A number of countries made production, particularly in Europe, and of course also placed an embargo on shipments to elsewhere around the world. So does that leave us vulnerable? The obvious response is yes. And what can be done in the circumstance?
You mentioned the fact of malaria, vaccine.
Well, malaria vaccine is just been unveiled.
Exactly.
But the question to ask is, where were we in the course of the research to develop malaria vaccine? So development of vaccines, production of vaccines, those are the key issues we shall be taking a look at in our conversation segment on Good Morning Nigeria today. Once again, I'm Kingsley Osadolo, joining Claire to welcome you to the program, in the course of which we have our regular segments. For now, here is Dennis Adegunloye with the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Dennis.
Yes, good morning, Kingsley, and good morning, Claire. Good morning, Nigeria. Here's the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari hosts President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey to a two-day official visit to Nigeria. During the visit, the leaders of the two countries are expected to consider about 24 bilateral agreements and memoranda of understanding. In addition to the bilateral discussions, President Erdogan will hold a one-on-one meeting with President Buhari and is expected to commission the Turkish Cultural Center in Abuja, while his wife, Emine, accompanied by First Lady Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, is expected to commission the newly renovated government secondary school in Wuse 2. The school was renovated by a Turkish aid organization, the Turkish Cooperation and Coordinating Agency, TICA. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says Nigeria is glad that the Biden administration is fully back on board the climate change global agenda in a commendable restoration of the U.S. government's support for the Paris Agreement. The Vice President stated this when he received a U.S. government delegation led by the White House Deputy National Security Advisor, Jonathan Feiner, who is currently in Nigeria. The Petroleum Industry Act will end the era of uncertainty in the oil and gas sector. Minister of State Petroleum Resources, Timothy Silva, said as the two regulatory agencies birthed by the PIA take effect, investors hitherto sitting on the fence are expected to take critical decisions according to the clarity it provides.
The successor agencies are already in place. The President, in his wisdom, has appointed the chief executives and the chairman of the boards. And on Friday, their letters of appointment have been issued. It is my place to ensure that they start work immediately.
One of the most positive developments in recent times is Nigeria's show of capacity to produce electric and gas-powered vehicles in line with the nation's determined contribution to the Paris Agreement on reducing carbon emissions.
What's really exciting is that this vehicle is assembled in Nigeria, in the old Volkswagen of Nigeria assembly plant. So this is a vehicle that would allow the nation to more easily meet the targets of the Paris Accord.
The engine, no sound, no heat. You saw us open the bonnet. You couldn't touch the bonnet or the engine of a petrol fueled car. But this one you could, yeah. And no smoke as well, no emissions. That's the key thing. With time, it become affordable for ordinary Nigerians.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has rearraigned two British nationals, James Richard Nolan and Adam Quinn, before a federal high court in Abuja for their alleged complicity in a controversial process and industrial development gas processing contract leading to the $9.6 billion arbitral award to P&ID Limited by a United Kingdom commercial court. The defendants, both directors of Goidal Resources Limited, a designated non-financial institution, were charged with 32 counts bordering on money laundering. After the charges were read, the third defendant, James Richard Nolan, pleaded not guilty to the charges. Adam Quinn, who is at large, was not available to make his plea, but prosecution counsel Ikele Iheanacho requested that his plea be recorded as guilty, which the judge granted. In view of Nolan's not guilty plea, Iheanacho asked the court for a trial date. However, defense counsel Michael Ajara applied to the court for the defendant to continue enjoying the bail granted to him by Justice Okon Abang, which the prosecution counsel did not oppose. Meanwhile, the Federal High Court sitting in Jalingo has set aside its earlier judgments delivered in 2019, where it barred the then Deputy Governor of Taraba State, Sani Abubakar Danladi, from participating in all elections from 2019. The presiding judge, Justice Simon Amoibida, said the court has jurisdiction to reverse itself if there is need for it. The new Partnership for African Development, NEPAD, is targeting the cultivation of 4 million hectares of farmland across 22 states in Nigeria within the next 10 years. During a consultative meeting with representatives of some state governments in Abuja, officials of the African Union Development Agency say thousands of smallholder farmers in the country will be empowered with agricultural inputs under the African Forest and Land Restoration Initiative.
It's not just direct employment that we are looking at, but indirect employment also.
There are approximately 700 millions of hectares of degraded land forests in Africa. So we are working with all governments, all stakeholders to restore that degraded land.
Governor Aminu Waziri Tambuwal says he was seriously touched by the bandit attack at the Goronyo market, describing the loss of 43 persons as unfortunate. The governor was on a condolence visit to the families and people of Goronyo local government.
Out of the 4 of us that hide in a house, they killed 3. Even I was shot twice.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has confirmed 159 new cases of COVID-19 in 11 states and the FCT. The breakdown indicates that the FCT has the highest caseload with 71, followed by Lagos, recording 20 new cases. Imo recorded 17, Rivers 15, Cross River 9, Kano and Ondo 7 each, Plateau 4, while Ekiti and Niger recorded 3 cases each. Delta records 2, and a single case was recorded in Bauchi. Nigeria now has 209,546 confirmed cases of COVID-19, out of which 197,546 have been treated and discharged. The death toll now stands at 2,838. Well, that's the news for now. The program continues shortly with Kingsley and Claire after this break. Good morning.
We've been trying our best to contain the situation, and in our operations, we've been able to make a lot of recoveries. We've been able to also arrest suspects that are involved in this kind of activities, and we've been able to also recover particularly arms and ammunition from those who are carrying it are lawfully and disturbing the peace of the people. But generally, our morale in the Nigerian police is always guided by our commitment to do what we have sworn to do. Peace and security must be looked into as a priority by all, to look at security as the business of all of us.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Enjoy faster connectivity and amazing discounts in the Airtel HBB seasonal offer. Get a MiFi for 9,999 Naira plus up to 55 gigabyte data, or a router for 19,999 Naira plus up to 160 gigabyte data. Offer valid while stock lasts. More data, more you. Reliable home broadband by Airtel, the smartphone network.
Shola, come and help me. You need to learn.
But I'm more interested in drawing.
How are you going to be part of the business if you don't learn?
You just don't understand.
Morning. Anyone for some Lipton?
The rich taste of Lipton awakens body and mind.
Let me have a look at your drawings. Son, these designs are amazing.
Lipton Yellow Label Tea. Awaken to what really matters.
Two entertaining sides will be looking to get the results when they meet at Ellen Road. Who will come out on top? This Saturday, it's Leeds United versus Wolverhampton Wanderers on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA, Silverbird Television and Sporty.com from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu, empowered by Integral.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Let's move on to business news. And in our package this morning, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo is saying that Nigeria and the World Bank are collaborating, or will be collaborating, to raise $30 million, and that's to finance a vaccine plant. We have details of this and more with Alika Okpanachi Arwa.
The Vice President says the global trend in health has made it critical for Nigeria to establish its own vaccine production facilities. He stated this in Abuja at the International Conference on Health Access and Socio-Economic Development Beyond COVID-19, the first multi-sectorial approach to solution finding.
The administration has established the Healthcare Sector Intervention Fund Facility, which has disbursed about $76.98 billion, that's about $185 million, to finance the acquisition and installation of critical medical care equipment, as well as the expansion of production lines in various pharmaceutical companies across the country. The CBN is also supporting a number of research and development initiatives in the health sector.
The conference was organized by the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development, NIPRD. Meanwhile, the African Export-Import Bank has urged the federal government to mobilize its public and private sectors to harness economic opportunities in the forthcoming intra-African trade fair. The Executive Vice President, Corporate Governance and Legal Services, Afrexim Bank, Dr. George Elombi, gave the charge at the occasion of the Nigerian Roadshow on Monday in Lagos. The roadshow is in preparation for the second intra-African trade fair, scheduled to hold in Durban, South Africa, between November 15 and 21st, 2021. The IATF was conceived by the board and management of Afrexim Bank in collaboration with the African Union Commission to promote trade and investment within the continent. It is expected to generate more than $40 billion in trade and investment deals, an opportunity beneficial to the Nigerian economy. The IATF is attracting over 1,000 exhibitors, about 10,000 visitors, buyers, and conference participants from all 55 African countries and the world. With business news, Alika Okpanachi Arwa.
Thank you very much, Alika, for the business news package. Coming up next is Newspaper Review.
welcome back. Now, Bayo is here with us to do the needful, his usual stuff, to look at the papers. Bayo, good morning.
Good morning,
Good to see you.
Thank you. Good morning, Kinsley.
Bayo, good to see
Good
you.
morning, Nigeria.
Yeah. Morning.
Right, let's begin with the Punch. And it says on its front page, DHQ seeks not to crush bandits with Tucano jets, laments U.S. condition. Now, there are riders there, Super Tucano meant for use against terrorists, insurgents, and not bandits. National Assembly awaits Buhari's declaration of bandits as terrorists. And Tambuwal, Sultan visits Sokoto invaded community and advised residents. And the picture story there, Governor of Kwara State, Abdurrahman Abdurrazak, and Muslim faithful in Agege, Lagos, during commemoration of the birth of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, on Tuesday. And those are the picture stories there, all the way from Lagos. You see Ilorin, and of course in Lagos. Now, other stories trending at the foot of the paper. PCN decries exodus of Nigerian pharmacists to Canada. And Adamawa cholera deaths have risen to 23. That's coming from the commissioner. Not central governors and revenue RMS FC brainstorm in Kogi on new sharing formula. Details of that on page 26. Now, other stories. Police threaten to punish inspector for voting at APC Congress. It's right there on the front page. Police threaten to punish inspector for voting at APC Congress. Now, workers, visitors must present vaccination cards from October 31st. That's from Kaduna. And just to take you a little above the nameplate, new amendment empowers INEC to use electronic voting machines. Senate. Strike threat, NNPC to rehabilitate 16 roads with 621 billion naira. And Erufai hails troops. 50 bandits killed in air and ground operations. That's on page 26. Kinsley.
Okay, let's also take a look at the Nation newspaper from above the nameplate. Gunmen invade meeting venue, kill 2 monarchs. That's on page 3, and that incident was in Imo State. Tambuwal, Sultan, Wamako, Console, Goroyo residents. That's on page 27. EFCC probe, Total Nigeria retires top executive. October deadline for COVID-19 vaccination in Kaduna. That's for civil servants, by the way. Details on page 27. Now, Anambra 2021, INEC, we will dispel election fraud rumors. And Peace Committee seeks non-violent poll. That's on page 27. 24 states shun financial autonomy for judiciary. And the lead story comes with a kicker, harsh and SARS. Police warn against protests in FCT and others. And police in show of force lock down Lekki Toll Gate. And inside, you have other headlines saying businesses lost 700 billion naira last year. NATO, that is the Association of Road Transport Owners, laments lack of compensation. Bond case files worry NBA. That was particularly in the Lagos area. Defense headquarters, Nigerians better informed. Troops kill 50 bandits in Kaduna. And Amadu Bello's granddaughter dies. Was born in 1960. And details on page 27 of that story. Bayo.
Thank you, Kinsley. Yesterday was Eid al-Mawlud, and some Christian faithfuls and clergy joined their Muslim compatriots to celebrate Eid al-Mawlud in Kaduna. They converged at the Ranchers B Stadium, and the General Overseer of Christ Evangelism Intercession Fellowship, Sabon Tesha, Pastor Yohana Buru, says that he joined to celebrate the birth of the Prophet because the Prophet is for everyone, irrespective of tribe, culture, tradition, color, continent, and region, because he preached peace throughout his lifetime. Pastor Buru says that as a peace announcing Christians joined their Muslim counterpart to change to change the attitude that has polarized two religions. He added that during Christmas, thousands of Muslims from different parts of northern Nigeria came to his church to also celebrate with Christians. He says the aim is promoting religious tolerance and better understanding among different faiths. He urged followers of Islam and Christianity to use such periods to propagate interreligious tolerance, love, unity, and peace throughout our nation. The Federation of Muslim Women Association of Nigeria, FOMWA, also called on federal government to improve security in educational institutions. As part of the celebration of Maulud, the chairperson for Publications Committee, Bilkis Oladimeji, called for security as it affects the girl child. They also asked for safe learning environment and engaging in skillful ventures that will make the students or graduates job providers rather than job seekers. They expressed concern over increased rate of drug abuse among the youth and stressed that all government must do all they can at all levels to ensure that children are protected. The story that Kingsley read relates to two monarchs, the Obi of Okulo and the Osula of Ihe Binowere, that have been murdered in Imo State. The two were taking part in a stakeholders meeting at Inenasa when a hoodlum struck. There were others that were also injured. The police spokesman, Mike Abatam, has confirmed the story and said those that were injured have been taken to hospital. Meanwhile, Governor Aminu Waziri Tambol of Sokoto, the Sultan, and Senator Wamako have visited Goroyo, where 43 persons were killed by gunmen who invaded the market that evening. The governor and the Sultan condole with the people and assure that measures are being taken to protect them. In fact, the chief of army staff had already visited Goroyo in the area. And in Kaduna, the joint operations of the Nigerian Air Force and ground troops have carried out successful operation clearing bandits between Saulawa and Farinrua axis in the Birningwari local government area. Armed bandits, about 50 of them on motorcycles, were sighted. The Air Force were able to target them, and the ground troops finished them up. Apparently, they've all been neutralized. Governor Nasir El-Rufai is quoted by the Commissioner for Internal Security as saying that this is a very bold development, and he encouraged the security agents not to be deterred in ending the crisis created by bandits. Meanwhile, there are reports and indication that in Daily Trust that there is optimism that terrorism and Boko Haram has come to an end. It says that the major development that came back in the past 5 months indicated that Abubakar Shekau was killed in May, and the announcement by the Chief of Defense Staff that Abu Musa al-Banawi has also died nails the coffin of the insurgent groups. The Daily Trust says that it also says that al-Banawi, whose name is Habib ibn Muhammad Yusuf, was in fact son of late Muhammad Yusuf, and who was actually killed sometime in December. Since Shekarau's death, about 8,000 members of Boko Haram are said to have handed themselves to the authorities in Nigeria. The Daily Trust said that there is still work to be done, as the terrorist group have shown in the past 12 years that they can bounce back. So our security are advised not to rest on their oars. The other positive development comes from the congratulatory message from President Muhammadu Buhari to former head of state General Yakubu Gowon, who turned 87. In the statement, General Gowon was congratulated and described as a formidable role model who continues to play for advocacy for peace and unity and a consistent voice in good governance and democracy. He says that his vision for a greater country bounce far back to the 70s, like the creation of the National Youth Service Corps, the creation of states, as well as the 3 R's, the philosophy of reconciliation, reconstruction, and rehabilitation. And another former head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, has indicated that on 4th of November, all the political parties that will be contesting in the Anambra November 6th election will be called together to sign a peace accord. General Abdul says that this has become imperative considering the orgy of violence that have been witnessed recently in Anambra State. The Peace Committee urges all stakeholders across party lines to eschew violence and work towards a peaceful Anambra election before, during, and after election. The police inspector is to be probed for his role in being seen casting the ballot during last Saturday's Congress in Kano. Of course, a Congress is a ceremony that required the local government delegates as well as the state delegate to vote. And apparently, since he's not a delegate from the local government, he apparently was foolishly casting the vote on behalf of somebody. This is coming soon after the Inspector General of Police had addressed officers of commissioners above and given instructions strictly that policemen should be apolitical. The officer in charge of the Zone A, the AIG, has directed that the appropriate disciplinary action should be taken, and whatever the outcome is will be made public.
All right.
Well, this is the month of October, and last year we all remember what happened, particularly in the southern part of the country, when the youth staged the NSAS protests that began peacefully and then got violent, having been overrun by various criminal elements. There was a horrendous outcome in terms of those protests last year in the Lagos area. Now, for several days, we've been hearing, oh, they want to mark the anniversary, or the police authorities are saying, no, there should be no march, and so on and so forth. I think it's useful to advise young persons, and the not so young, that the tempers are still very raw, in a sense, and tension is also high. The police have mobilized. They have done their show of force, say, in the Lagos area, because the Lekki toll gate, the Admiralty toll plaza on the Lekki-Ekpe Expressway was the epicenter of the protest before, of course, it then spread to other parts of the country, more especially in the south. But arising from the NSAS protests, there were a number of measures, including the setting up of various judicial commissions. Initially, they were given 6 months to handle their tasks, but some of them have extended their work until recently. The Lagos panel only just concluded its sitting and is going to forward its report to the state government. So the question should also be, what has arisen from the recommendations by the various judicial commissions of inquiry that were set up? The National Economic Council was reported as saying compensation will be paid to persons who suffered losses and so on and so forth. But there should also be punishment for persons who were engaged in wanton violence and the destruction of public property.
Public property, yes.
We saw what happened to courts in Lagos. We saw what happened to police stations. We saw what happened to policemen. And some of these incidents were recorded on video. So if the faces are visible and identifiable, then of course the law should also take its course against them. We have seen what has happened in the U.S. when there was an insurrection on the 6th of January this year.
Yes.
I mean, as has been indicated, there were all kinds of forces that prepared the demonstrators to attack the Capitol. The Vice President was in there. The Speaker of the House was also in there. They were lucky to have escaped with their lives. What we have seen over the past several months, participants in that act of insurrection have been taken in and convicted, some of them from video evidence, some of them from statements and claims that they made. That tells you that the long arm of the law will always catch up with you. So it's not sufficient to say that, oh, you were ventilating your anger, so you went to a court premises, you burnt down the entire court, destroyed court records, and then your face is visible in the video and you get away with it.
Well, it's sad. October last year was a very dark cloud over the nation, especially with what was described as NSAS protests, and eventually ended up violently. Already this morning, on my way here, I noticed the police presence, and again, it's because of apparent threat, which the police have advised against about commemorative protests in Lagos, in Abuja, Federal Capital Territory, and Plateau, they have been advised to desist from such protests. The tendency is that when you say you want to protest, yes, it is your right, but you forget that other people too have a right. What happened last year, they were protesting, which was their right, but they ended up stopping other people's movement, obstructing movement, and eventually, on October 20th, it became very violent. And therefore, there should be, yes, those who were victims should be compensated, and those who were complicit in some of the crime there must also be held accountable. Luckily for us, the Nigerian police had identified some of those who were engaged in the burning down of police stations. Those should be charged to court, and they should be made to face the music.
All right, Bayo.
Clear, I don't even want to sign Bayo off. We also have to ask ourselves what lessons the law enforcement agents have learnt from the NSAS protests. We know that a number of innocent police officers lost their lives in the course of those protests, something we hadn't also seen in this country. But there was a recent video from Kogi of some policemen who mounted a roadblock, and then they took one of the passengers from a vehicle, and they said there was a commentary that was going on in that video of the young man who was taken on the bike by a police officer and taken to an ATM to go and withdraw 25,000. This is part of what the young persons were always complaining about. Happily, the Kogi State Command has already identified some of those officers who were involved in that incident recorded on the video, and I think that they are going ahead with the prosecution. What is this part of policing, that you would take a young man, whatever the ground of suspicion, to say he should go and withdraw money? Are you also fining him and he's paying the fine to you?
That is ultra vires the role of the police, and the officers involved should be disciplined. On the other hand, if you recall, at the end of the NSAS protest and the consequent destruction that followed, over 132 police stations were affected. If you count the number of policemen that were murdered during that time, there are over 56 of them.
I'm sorry, I have to stop you at this point, and it's quite fundamental, the issue that Kingsley raised about lessons learned.
Yes.
It's always good to take stock of lessons learned. Bayo, I'd like to thank you again.
Thank you again.
We'll see you tomorrow. All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Don't go away, sit tight. When we come back, we'll talk on globalization and, of course, its impact on COVID, on vaccine production.
The federal government, through NPHCDA, commenced Phase 2 vaccination of all persons 18 years and above with safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines approved by WHO and certified by NAFDAC. Special arrangement has been made for staff, their dependents and retirees of ministries, departments and agencies of government, private corporate organizations and non-governmental organizations. To benefit from this special arrangement, visit www.nphcda.gov.ng/corporate vaccination to obtain, fill and submit the Google form. NPHCDA will contact you within 48 hours. Protect yourself, your family and your workplace against COVID-19. COVID-19 vaccines are free, safe and effective. For further inquiries, call 0700-220-1122 or send a mail to covid19.vaccination@nphcda.gov.ng. This message is from the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency.
Dear customer, link your Airtel number to your national identification number today. Here are easy ways you can do it. Dial *121*1# on your Airtel line and follow the prompts on the screen. Type in your 11-digit government-approved NIN number. You will receive a confirmation message to confirm your entry. You can also visit www.airtel.com.ng/NIN to link your phone number to your NIN. If you do not know your NIN, simply dial *346# to get it. No stress, no wahala.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
A new edition of TV Guide is out exclusively with Governor Simon Lalong of Plateau State.
Since assuming office, our rescue administration has pursued the path of peace and reconciliation and restored confidence among people of different ethnic, religious, and political persuasions. Peace is back on the plateau. We are building world-class infrastructure in roads and opening up opportunities for innovation.
The edition is a compendium of mind-blowing stories for your reading pleasure, ranging from entertainment, economy, sports, media, politics, family, and lots more. Pick up a copy and keep abreast with issues and trending features within our space. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Two entertaining sides will be looking to get the results when they meet at Ellen Road. Who will come out on top? This Saturday, it's Leeds United versus Wolverhampton Wanderers on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA, Silverbird Television and Sporty.com from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu and powered by Integral.
Globalization and impact on vaccine production. That's the focus of our conversation today. So let's listen into this background report put together by our correspondent, Oyemi Ajayi.
The race for COVID-19 vaccine could have been said to have borne some fruits, as some pharmaceutical companies have come up with vaccines which have been quite effective in the fight against COVID-19. Despite the spate of production, many have decried the fact that many of the developing countries have lesser access to the acquisition of vaccines, leaving them vulnerable and exposed. The heads of the International Monetary Fund, World Bank Group, World Health Organization and World Trade Organization met with the CEOs of leading vaccine companies to discuss strategies to improve the access to COVID-19 vaccines, especially in low and lower middle income countries and in Africa. The task force expressed concerns that without urgent steps, the world is unlikely to achieve the end 2021 target of vaccinating at least 40% of the population in all countries, a critical milestone to end the pandemic and for global economic recovery. They took note that countries with high vaccination rates have collectively pre-purchased over 2 billion doses in excess of what is required to fully vaccinate their populations, while calling again on those countries to urgently fulfill their dose donation pledges with unearmarked upfront deliveries to COVAX and release vaccine companies from options and contracts so those doses can be delivered to people in low and lower middle income countries. In addition, vaccine manufacturers should prioritize and fulfill their contracts to COVAX and AVAX. So far, how effective has the global COVID-19 vaccination process been, and what efforts are being made to ensure equitable and even distribution of vaccines globally? These are some questions begging for answers from guests already seated in the studio.
All right, thank you very much there for that background. We have two guests with us in the studios and another guest joining us via Zoom this morning. Let's welcome Professor Oyewale Tomori, who is a renowned professor of virology, former president, Nigerian Academy of Science, and currently chairman of BioVaccines Nigeria Limited. Professor Tomori, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
And also here with us in the studios is Professor Martin Emeje. Professor Emeje is head of research and development at the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development. That's NIPRID. Prof, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Thank you for inviting us.
Okay.
And also joining us via Zoom is Mazi Sam Uhuabunwa. And Mazi Sam Uhuabunwa is President, Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. Thank you very much, Mazi, for joining us.
Thank you very much. God bless you. It's a pleasure.
All right, gentlemen, once again, we welcome you to this conversation. Let's just begin by having an understanding of where we are today with regard to vaccines and vaccination. The matter has, of course, come to greater public attention on account of coronavirus and the various vaccines that have been developed and have been applied, plus the nationalism surrounding it all. But lately, we have also seen a spike in the number of fatalities arising from from cholera. Thousands of persons have died this year. Questions have been asked as to where the vaccines are. We are told that we're expecting the vaccines from outside of the country. Coronavirus vaccines we're expecting from outside the country. You mentioned some other name, you say, oh, we're expecting it from outside the country. Oh, are we at the mercy of producers of vaccines elsewhere? Professor Tomori?
Yeah, we are. And we got ourselves into that situation.
How?
Because when others were busy developing vaccines, we're waiting to consume what they're developing. We've been independent now for 60 years. We're producing vaccines before. VOM is still producing vaccines. So what is happening? Because we did not follow up on what we do. We didn't care about our own people. And that's the problem. And that's why I say we got ourselves into the place where we are.
That's short and sharp. But how did we get ourselves into this?
Because we neglected science, we neglected research. We did not, the things that really concern the life of our people, we neglected all those ones and faced things that were totally ephemeral. That's all. That's the situation. So sometimes when people blame and talk about, what do you call it, persecution or racism or something, I think we're just not facing the truth. This country was producing a vaccine before, so what happened to us? These are the questions that we should be asking, rather than blaming those people talking about nationalism. Nationalism will always occur where you have a country that cares about its people, where you have a government that cares about the people. We've been blaming the Europeans also for hoarding viruses. But remember, when this thing started, they paid for those vaccines even before we knew what was going to happen. Therefore, it was like they're taking a gamble, a good gamble for the life of their people. If A doesn't work, maybe B will work. Maybe C will work. So they bought all those ones up. I blame them now when they have it, for maybe after using it, they have it, they're not giving it out. But at that time, they were doing the right thing. It was a gamble. None of us knew which vaccine was going to work. And so because they cared about their people, they bought up these vaccines. If it doesn't work, we have an alternative. And you remember when they had a bit of a problem with one of the vaccines, they said abandon it because we have others. We won't dare to do that because we didn't even have vaccines. So I think let's face the truth of what is happening. We are responsible for what is happening to us.
Okay, let me bring in Professor, Sam Ohabonwa, who is joining us via Zoom. Okay, I understand he's not ready. Professor Emeje, I want to go back to ask, if you look at the 17 SDG goals, most of them are health, they focus on health and health related. In fact, almost all of them are interrelated and they all deal with health. Now, the commitment of countries around the world to those goals is that stronger together and no one will be left behind. Within the context of provision of, vaccine, preventable diseases and pharmaceutical products, are we actually paying lip service to this commitment?
Thank you. I'm no longer a visitor to your station, and I know that you knew when you heard the one coming, you know where I stand already.
No, we don't know.
Okay. I expect that you know. I'm saying this
Any day
because
you come here, we have different topics for discussion. So I cannot read your mind.
It's not for you to read my mind. I'm reading my mind, not yours. I expect that you know where I stand, and I will re-emphasize just to prove the point and to just add to what Professor Tomori has said, because that's what I have been saying all of the time that I come to this place. It is not about any SDG goals. It's not about any ABC goals. Which ABC goals? Which goals? Goals for what? What are your own goals? You are talking of goals that people are doing meeting in UN or WHO or somewhere and developing goals that you should come and agree on go. Have your own goals first. If you don't have goal in your family, you want to come and have goal in the church or in the mosque, you will fail. Your family will fail. So develop your own goal. What are our own goals? And you will develop your own goals based on science. Classical science. evidence-based decision-making. So when we talk about research and development, you are talking about your own people, you are talking about your own nation. It drives regulatory decision-making, not that WHO or one international body, which we all know, we believe, we key into. You wait, they take home decisions, develop home goals. Then they come to the international community with those goals, with local goals from home, to come and see how they make it global. Then you come and sit down to adopt. You did not come with your own goals. My friend, let us develop our own home goals.
But we are where we are.
Yes.
Because of, the breaking down of those walls, because of the coming together of nations.
Yes.
Because of closer interaction.
Yes.
And that is how we are able to deal with most of the public health issues that we are dealing with.
The point is, there's no argument about international cooperation. There's no argument about that. But before international cooperation, what are you contributing to the international cooperation? That's what I'm saying. You don't wait for people who are serious, who develop strong R&D in their countries, therefore have strong scientific evidences to drive their regulatory processes. Then you come for meeting, then you debate on their own. If you bring your own, it will be part of that international pot where discussions will be made. And that means at home, you have something that is also going to be accepted globally. So I am honestly today, I will not participate in blaming anybody anywhere in the world for us. Because if I do my own, then I hold my own, then you blame me too. I want to be blamed for keeping the things I develop for my country.
But these are processes that are regulated, that are internationally regulated, and there are principles and guidelines, even for accessing even the technology to come up with your own goals, with your own templates.
No. You see, there's no international protocol.
With regards to vaccine?
There is no international protocol that says this is what you should do in your country. Science is global. Science is universal. So when you follow scientific procedures, because it is universal, you might use different models, but you will get to the same endpoint. Okay? Where there are differences, it will be discussed and we will agree on what should be done. If you see how WHO works, they get experts from different parts of the world. And you are expected, in fact, at WHO meetings, at the international, some of those international committees which you participate, it gets to a level that you even vote. Even on a scientific issue, you even have to take vote. You are 18, and then you discover that we are not agreeing on an issue. They'll say, okay, let's vote. But we won't come and tell you that we voted. I have participated. I participate, not that I participated. And we vote to take the... So
if there's a tie in 18 members,
yes.
9-9,
there are guidelines on how to reach decision.
Okay, to break the tie.
Exactly, to break the tie. But the point I'm making is, if you now come there without anything, you will still sit down and be listening to others who are doing something serious. Then you will only be a voter. You will only be a voter. Then you consume the product of that voting in your own environment.
Professor Emeje,
yes.
Professor Tomore has expressed his, a bit mildly, but you have expressed yours a bit forcefully.
I don't know how to express my own.
A bit forcefully, but there's no question that apparently, and evidently, the science community has been suffering in silence. But we have to break out of that mode and then still look what the next steps will be. We're going to, of course, interrogate all of this, because they say that if you don't know where the rain started trashing you, then you might not learn the appropriate lessons. Mazi Owambawa, I don't know whether we understand that it's still not available. That's the president of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. Once he's ready, we'll get back to him. Professor Tomori, well, we can always, lament the fact that we witnessed, systematic breakdown of critical values, of critical infrastructure and institutions in our country. Some will say, oh, we never planned, and then these are the consequences. But from the point of view, because this is the public health emergency that we are faced with now, that is inviting our attention to what we used to do right. When we were doing it right, what was the case? I mean, you were a professor of virology. Everybody knew you, University of Ibadan, and so on and so forth, and of course, a global figure. But I understand that Wambowa is ready. That's right, the engineers are telling us that, Prof. I will just pause the preface to my question. Mazi, Sam Wambowa, good to have you join us again via Zoom. Of course, I hope you were able to listen into what the earlier guests had said with regard to why we are where we are. We can actually use the vaccine issue to extrapolate into our pharmaceutical production and why we seem to be, why we are this way. From your own perspective, just what is it that we're not getting right?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians, and good morning, Professor Tomori and my colleague, Dr. Professor Meche. I believe that we, like the global situation, the world was not prepared for COVID-19, but Nigeria was less prepared than the average. And what we haven't gotten right was our focus on research and development and preparedness for pandemics and epidemics. We seem to be lackadaisical about preparing for emergencies and the future. Somebody says, even we are not prepared for the present, then why are you talking about the future? But I think we've learned a lesson. There is need to make investments for the future, to predict the future, to project the future. That is why you have science, that's why you have research and development. We have underplayed research, we have underplayed development, we have underplayed support for investment in critical industry. We have treated all industries and all aspects of human life as if they were the same. But it has become clear that health is the issue. So what we haven't gotten right, to answer your question specifically, is the understanding of that you need to make long-term investments to be able to prepare for future. And that long-term investment goes into research and development, which is the easiest way to project the future and to prepare for the future. Nigeria needs to change its orientation to investment in research and development and also in its support to critical industry, healthcare industry, educational industry. These are industries that require long-term investment, but the dividends come in having capable and mature and equipped manpower to drive the economy. So that's the orientation that we need to change now. And I'm beginning to see the federal government and all the stakeholders, including the industry itself, gearing up to this. The question is, are we going to stay on this long enough, or is it after the pandemic is over, return to our usual ways? That's the challenge we face now.
Okay, Mazi, I'd like to ask you a question, because more often than not, we ask ourselves the big question with regards to COVID-19 management. What is our capacity, to come up with, or to produce vaccine? And indeed, the president of the African Development Bank the other day said, look, what we need to do is to begin to look at how we can develop our capacity to produce, vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines. But I'd like to ask you, with the complexity of, producing a vaccine, such as for COVID-19, can we do it alone? Does it have does it require any global, cooperation? Okay,
the world to respond to the vaccine eating that we have seen has shown the benefit of globalization and global cooperation and impact. Pfizer, and all the groups that it has collaborated with, and all the companies didn't do all the research themselves. Some did some preliminary research, some did advanced research, some did application research, and they collaborated. They got document and data from across the globe with WHO, intermediating and sharing data. This was the first time the world industry and the research group collaborated. We broke down those barriers that separated what you call protection of intellectual property that could delay sharing of data and information. So I think global cooperation is important. And in Nigeria, it's even more so because no one institution can handle the work that is required to come out with this kind of vaccines. So globalization is critical, but that globalization has to start from localization. Localization is the ability of local institutes like the National Institute of Pharmaceutical Research and Development, the Nigerian Medical Research Institute, and all those research institutes working with industry in a collaborative manner with government standing as intermediary. The way WHO stood for globalization, so should the federal government or the Ministry of Health in this case be in the center, but make it a front burner issue. Capacity is costly to develop, and also because vaccines are actually bought all over the world, primarily by the government, especially in the third world. So it's also important that government gives assurance and makes investment. In America, Pfizer, BioNTech, and all the other companies that participated in this project received funding in forms of long-term order. The American government gave them long-term millions and billions of dollars. So that was a way of investing by paying ahead for the product and taking the risk. Whether the product succeeded or not, the government had paid. So government needs to put investment and support industry and support research in a collaborative manner. So localization first and then globalization secondly.
All right, Mazi, thank you very much. We'll come back to you presently. But back to the studios, Professor Oyewale Tomori, I was asking, what is it that we got wrong? That we then lost what we were already building, and likely, therefore, if we had continued on that trajectory, would have escalated to be global players, or at least regional, if not continental players.
Thank you very much. When Martins was talking, I remember my younger days. I was probably equally as violent, as virulent as he was. But age mellows you down. And that's what I used to say one thing. When I'm talking to people, I talk about the fact that I'm very passionate about my country because I owe this country more than I can ever pay back. And I'm saying that seriously. I mean, they asked me, I'm asking for utopia. I said, no, I had utopia in Nigeria. Growing up as I am with my family, 39th child of a multigamous father, I was being bred for the farm. Then a government policy came in, free education. Not only that, compulsory free education. It was a choice between my father going to prison or sending me to school. Of course, he chose sending me to school. And throughout that period, until I finished, I had scholarship all throughout. I never left this country. That was the utopia. So all you were asking for utopia, I lived in utopia, Nigeria. We can get it back. How did we do it? There was commitment to nationalism. There was this patriotism in the leaders we have. I'm not saying they didn't do anything wrong, but generally, they believed in the country. And they put us where we are. And we, from Ugeli, I grew up from Ilesha. From Ilesha to Ugeli, to Zaria. Nobody followed me to school. That was the country we had then. That's the utopia we're talking about. It was possible because people were decent, because people started with home training and put that out to the public. Now we want the people, our children, to be trained outside. Home training, we lost that one. That's that when you're asking, how did we go wrong? We lost that. That's the beginning. We're no longer training our children. Unfortunately, people of my generation, who should have actually continued that. We saw what we're doing in some countries as punishment. child's right. You cannot be cheating. But it was training us to be what we are. But we said, oh, no, my child can't do that. And then we over-pampered them. And now we're getting that. Sorry about NSAS and all those things. We're reaping the benefit of the neglect of the past. And that's what led us to this place. It is not that we don't have plans in this country. Fantastic plan, but implementation. And who implements is that individual. That individual you refuse to train goes in and messes up your plan. We have plans. Those are the issues that I think we need to begin to look at. It's not that Nigeria doesn't have plans. It's not that we don't have talented people. But somewhere along the line, self-interest, overriding national interest, and that's what is pushing us where we are.
Okay, Professor Emeje, my question again is to you. And Mazi Sam talked about localization first, and I'm sure, and you gave a smile, a huge smile. Now, obviously, vaccine production is quite complex and expensive. But for countries who, take interest in it, it's usually driven by interest, and I'm sure you know why. But now, as a country, we have more interest and needs for vaccine, for going into vaccine production than even the rest of the world. We know how much impact that public health is dealing with us. But is it something that we can begin, to develop maybe from a sub-regional level, regional level? Because to undertake a R&D in vaccine production is not something one person can sit down in one room and do. You need to reach out. So can we begin to look at building our capacity from the sub-regional, from the ECOWAS level, from the African AU level?
Okay, thank you. The human capital for making vaccines is not lacking in Nigeria. I just took that vaccine because you are mentioning vaccine. By the way, let me just say, vaccine is a drug. It's a drug. So we should get that very clearly.
Because that's the subject of our conversation. We're looking at how globalization, is impacting on our capacity.
But whatever we are discussing, you can't, like Ganifa used to say, you cannot have legality upon illegality. The foundation is always important for us to get it right, so that this discussion here will be clearer. Vaccine is a drug, and making of vaccine is not professionally and scientifically different from making other pharmaceuticals in terms of complexities. Every one has its own complexity, and the infrastructure required to make them
takes 10 years.
Sorry, no.
We're told it takes 10 years.
No, it's like saying it takes 10 years to take a drug to the market. We heard that when we were in the pharmacy school, right? But the world is developing, and technologies are coming up. So what used to be 20 years or 10 years is no longer 20 years or 10 years. How many years did it take for us to have the COVID-19 vaccine, if it takes 10 years to have a vaccine? So we are not in the 14th century again. I wish I was alive to witness what Professor Tomori is saying. But as old as I am, I don't know what he is talking about.
As young as you are.
But you see the problem. Yeah. So there was even a Nigeria like that. I'm not aware. I only read it in paper. I thought these people just writing things. So, but he is still alive. And look at him. By the way, let me tell you why Professor Tomori is in Abuja. He's in Abuja because the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development is having a one-week conference on COVID-19, which the Vice President, Professor Osinbajo, attended. Mazi Sam Ohabunwa is in Abuja because of that conference. It's on COVID-19. That's who we are. So if we are discussing any drug and NIPRID is not in the center, you are still joking. These are things we are talking about. That's why you see this conference we are having, even religious people. Prof, permit me to say this, sir, because yesterday Professor Tomori started crying on the podium. On our podium yesterday, this man started crying. So let me not go further. I didn't
so
take his permission.
What do we have on ground?
We have
yes,
what we have on ground. Like we said here, what we have on ground is that we do not need human capital to make any pharmaceutical product, including vaccine. The infrastructure, the non-human infrastructure that we need is in the hands of government. Yes. You know, I said here the other day that government must provide a vision and must be ready to also drive it. And people will tell you, people don't know, in my opinion, with all sense of responsibility, who don't know will tell you that in other countries, government does not provide more. Government does not provide what? The highest funder of research in the world is the National Institute of Health of the United States of America. It's a government institution. So if the White House is not providing money and NIH is providing money, does that mean government is not providing money? So AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine that we got in Nigeria first, and we were dancing around, is Oxford University owned by an individual? Is it not a public institution? So government must be ready deliberately. And if you listen to the speech of the vice president at our conference, he has said that is what we will do. And I gave the vote of thanks. I told him, you are a professor, you have promised, so do it. Prof was there. So we have the human capital, we have the skill, we have, and that is more important than equipment. You see, if you have people that are knowledgeable and know what to do, then your problem is almost solved.
You know, Professor Emeje, this point you are making, I would like, because we are still grappling with the Zoom connection to Mazi. Oh, okay. Just before, I want him to speak to this same point that you were talking about. Mazi Samohamawa, let me raise this issue. We keep talking about insufficient attention to R&D and what commitment level is required. Is it necessarily the case, because I know that you've also been a major player in the Economic Summit Group, is it necessarily the case that we tend to focus too much on the management of the political economy, that we neglect the role of science, the role of even health, as a wealth creator, as a wealth provider? And then when we are managing the political economy, do we also miss the point that perhaps our lawmakers need to also be at the center of this drive?
I think the issue is essentially the lack of a vision. A country that does not have a uniting vision, a destination, will have problem with dealing with the multiple issues that it has to deal with. And so often it is distracted by one insecurity problem, by one economic devaluation, by one global economic crisis. There are things that can distract a government and any institution that is not that does not have a vision, destination. So what is lacking, in my view, that is the problem, is that our country has failed to have a united vision that directs where all of us should be going. And in directing where all of us is going, appropriately divide responsibilities to each group or segment or each thematic group, and then assign each group with deliverables over a given time span. Set a vision, set key deliverables, set timelines, set rewards, and all that can happen with the accomplishment of each timeline and each key performance indicator. If we did that, we'll probably be making much progress. Right now, we have failed. We tried Vision 2010, it didn't fly. We started Vision 2020, we completed it, but this implementation was lackluster. There was no effort to generate buy-in by all people of the country. So for us to deal with national issues in a holistic manner, we used to have a division, we need to have a vision and design the strategy to accomplish the different elements of the vision and have a long-term view and make long-term investment. And importantly, have consistency in our policy implementation and the ability to keep on the mark till we'll achieve the goals. We soon lose sight, lose concentration when we do not have where we say we are going and when we plan to get there. My advice to us and to our country is to develop a vision that is encompassing. And when we develop a national vision, we develop sub-divisions, healthcare vision, education vision, economic vision, and all sorts of other areas. Then we can then measure ourselves. Do we have the appropriate resources? How do we generate those resources? How do we collaborate? How do we leverage? How do we buy technology that we do not have? Then we will begin to move. Today, nobody's planning about population. Nigeria's population is growing. I don't know if anybody's planning school enrollment. How many new schools we need to build? How many new colleges or universities? People are graduating from the universities, reading pharmacy, medicine. We do not know any plan of how to employ them productively. So we end up training them and they migrate to other markets in a manner that is not orderly and not properly controlled. So lack of a vision, lack of policy consistency, lack of follow-up, these are our challenges.
All right, I'll still remain with you. If we look at, apart from a few, pharmaceutical brand names, out there in the market, majority are foreign. We get them out from outside this country. Yet we talk about, and Professor Umeje here is really emphatic about the availability of skills and human resource, to be able to, do some of these assignments that we are asking. What stops the private sector? Because all the time we are asking the federal government to do. What stops the private sector from organizing and taking up some of these responsibilities? Because that was how COVID-19 vaccine came about in the first place.
Yeah, the private sector in Nigeria is fragile. It's not like the private sector in the UK or in the USA that are well established over many years of running in economies that have stable policies, that have incentives, that have promotional competitive advantages. Madam, the private sector operates on a profit basis. They make the investment and expect a return on their investment. And if you run in an economy with high cost of production, an economy that cannot protect its borders and keep its rules and maintain laws and order, it becomes a fragile environment for people to make investment long-term. Our economy is not promotive of long-term investment because of policy inconsistency. Look at what is happening at our foreign exchange. Look at what is happening to our Naira. These are things that people will be have difficulty in investing. You invest when Naira is 200 per dollar and you borrow money, then it is now 500. How are you going to pay it? And prices can't rise the same level at the devaluation because the economy does not have the purchasing power to accommodate corresponding price increases. So the environment promotes investment, and investment flows to where it is most welcome and most rewarded. Global private investment can come to Nigeria to strengthen local Nigerian private investment if we make our economy attractive for investment. And to get that attraction, you must provide security of lives and property, you must enforce law and order, and you must have a macroeconomic stability that promotes investment and an environment that also works on investment. So this is the way it is. And Nigeria needs to do better for the private sector to play along. I need to sign off here because I have to enter the aeroplane now and fly. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute this morning. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much, Mazi. We wish you a safe flight. And then, of course, you've been our guest on Good Morning Nigeria on a number of occasions in the past. Thank you also for your insight this morning. So back to our two guests in the studios here.
Kisla, I was going to ask him, if the environment was not as friendly as he's saying, why are we attracting foreign investments? Why are people?
Well, a number of those investors are portfolio investors.
The private sector
portfolio.
Yeah.
Portfolio.
The
I mean,
private
some of them
sector
are also setting up base, but it could be more rapid. There are, I mean, that's economics, but you know. So back to Professor Tomori and Professor Emeje. Professor Emeje has made the point that we don't lack human capital, which is a fact. I mean, Nigerians are celebrated all over the world. But in relation to our topic for conversation this morning, if you look around, we also do not lack institutions. There is virtually no subject matter for which you don't have an institute for this, institute for that, X, Y, Z. But I'm sure that if we were to visit some of these places, you'll find that they're either run down or rotting. What is the disconnect? What is the disconnect so that the operating environment for the valuable human capital we have doesn't then flourish?
Thank you very much. There were a few things you said before, which I thought I would like to before answer your question.
Yes, please.
We need globalization, but we must contribute. If you don't contribute, you are just a consumer. And they use everything. And one good example, now we're boasting that we can go to Britain with our card and no problem. It's not because of what we did, but because of what India did. India took Britain to task and said, if you're not going to allow my COVID sheet to enter, your own COVID, whatever, will not enter. And that was the beginning. That was what broke the ice. So it's not because we did anything in Nigeria. So let's not deceive ourselves.
It was what India brought to the table.
India came, but you must bring something to the table. India told Britain, I mean, when you saw the British ambassador when she wrote that thing or whatever it is, I was just laughing. We keep liking to deceive ourselves and cover the truth. The truth was that India told Britain, sorry, if your COVID, my COVID, she can't go to your place. Your own COVID, whatever, cannot come to my place. And that settled the problem. And once they approve COVID shield, then they have know that you're not to approve the one we're using. So let's put that one aside. So globalization is good, but you must contribute something to it. We are not contributing.
So how then do you contribute?
How do you
tap into your
back
human
to the
capital and the many institutions that we have?
The thing is not the institution, it's the environment in which those things are functioning. You talk about our people going to diaspora. They live here, and within 2 days, they are making progress because the environment allowed them to function. Our environment here does not allow us to function. I did boast that I studied in Nigeria, and I never left here. Things were okay, but I knew what we struggled through as time went on after independence. The lab I worked in Ibadan was, we received facilities from 1925 when materials came in. We kept those materials in there. What spoiled the whole thing? The June 12th anniversary, when for a week nothing happened. Everything, I don't want to cry here today. Everything we built in 1925 to that moment, in 1994, got lost because there was riot, we couldn't go in there, no electricity, and all those kind of things. That environment is what we lack. I mean, a lot of our colleagues who are making progress, go and find out they are working with people outside the country. There's none of them who is making real progress. Because if you have to, I mean, some of those, I don't know what they do. For what I've experienced, we're working with legislators over the 10 billion for this thing. If you don't have the passion for the country, you will give up. Because everywhere there's an obstacle by one person or the other, because of self-interest, not the national interest. And I keep saying one thing, it's not the plan, it's not the vision, it is the implementation. Who are the people implementing it? If their self-interest overrides your national interest, your vision becomes blurred. Your implementation becomes null and void. So that's the problem, sir. And not, again, I'm not blaming the civil service. Even some of our vice chancellors in the university, the institution I'm mentioning, they're equally as bad as the politicians. Let's be frank with ourselves. I mean, we have vice chancellors who are ruining their universities. But when the time comes, what do? They're the ones that get appointed into other things because the more they ruin, the more attractive they are to the government. These are issues that we need to look at. Integrity. Or, we talk about transparency. What we do is opaque transparency. They cover it up. Translucency, that's the word we use. And that's the message that we're trying to create. Let's the patriotism, the love for this country, come into the action of each and every of us individually. You will see how this country will rise.
Is there a sense in which the apparent nationalism of pharmaceutical products and vaccines going on right now in parts of the world can translate to some form of patriotism for us, you know, in the area of public health.
Fantastic. You know, like I said, when I started, I said, I don't blame those people because they care for their people. They're interested. It's their people. So they are going to buy vaccines all over your place. It was because, as I said, they were not sure it was going to work. Because they care for their people, they took a gamble. They are proactive countries. Well, there are two different, proactive, non-active, inactive. I'm not even sure which we are in Nigeria. Your wait for donation doesn't come. You're not even buying the vaccine. I mean, these are some of the differences between us. The proactive countries went ahead and bought, and then we're blaming them for being proactive. I don't have anything against nationalism. Globalization, you must, what makes global? Individual nations. And when your strength of the global is the weakness of the nation. And if you don't make our nation as strong as we are, the pride that we have. I went out to a meeting in Gavi. Sorry to bring that up, because I think it is necessary to let our people know some of the things we go through when we go outside. I went to Gavi. I was elected into Gavi board for my first introduction, typical Nigerian. I told them how I'm from Nigeria. I'm this, I'm that. And everybody was clapping, you know. The first statement of the chief executive, what's his name? I can't remember his name now, was at the opening ceremony, the first presentation. He says, I'm very proud. I mean, I'm very glad to announce today that the money, the first installment that Nigeria misused has now been paid. How would you feel in that kind of environment? But there's more to it. He says somebody in Nigeria, you know, took 10% what you call bank charges on the money that belongs to us. How are you going to feel when you get to that kind of place? Those are the issues we're talking about that makes all this. So yes, there's something about nationality, but that is self-interest, not for the sake of this. The money that was brought from outside, somebody took it. And it's going to affect you and I, whether you go outside. So that, the lack of patriotism in the people is the problem. When I talk about environment, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, connecting with the environment, you're having problems. You know, somebody developed all those things. They try to make it this thing. All the way we're depending on all those things. Time has come, and I say people, to take pride in our country. Your people have the capacity. They have the capability. Example, like I said, they go into diaspora, and tomorrow they are making waves. Bring them back to this environment. They will go back to where they were, because the environment is important. Our government has not created that environment for the talented people in this country to function. And we're talking about brain drain. They're going to Saudi Arabia. A professor who taught somebody, even went to line up. That's the point we're saying. A brain would drain the way it can be nurtured. Nigeria doesn't nurture our brain, and that's the point we're trying to say.
At the AU level, there is a compendium of, you know, skills together, working on an African vaccine manufacturing, you know, company, I think.
Yes.
I'm sure you're aware of that.
Yes, sure.
What is the prospect?
Good. You know, I'll go back a bit. Africa came up, well, 4 or 5 years ago, the African Vaccine Manufacturing Initiative met and said there was no way we're going to sustain vaccine production if every country starts producing vaccine. Okay, Senegal is already producing yellow fever. So you keep producing yellow fever, and all of us in Africa will buy from you. That's the only way to sustain that. South Africa is producing one other thing, the same thing, Algeria, whatever. And Nigeria, we hope we're going to produce this one. So we all buy from you. But that's planned. Again, like I said, we didn't implement. We did not follow up with implementation. What are we having today? There's a frenzy, a global frenzy, coming out and say Africa must produce COVID vaccine. You have one here, Rwanda, you want this and that. Bilateral agreement. They're destroying that unity that we try to build together. Let me give you a good example. When Germany goes to Senegal to go and set up a vaccine, the other one goes to Rwanda. The time of purchase, we're going to purchase according to who is your sponsor. If Cape Verde, I'm just giving an example, needs to buy X vaccine, and he doesn't have the money, as usual, and France decides to give him that money, France is not going to give the money to Cape Verde. He's going to give that money to his factory they established here. And then the person will produce that one, building up their own factory. These are lessons we need to learn. It is not just sitting around AU and making proposals, but put your money into it. 3/4 of AU funding is coming from EU. They are funding all of this. The building we have in us is built by China. What is wrong with us? So those are the issues that we need to talk about. I mean, it's not that we don't have resources. We have money. Let's not deceive ourselves. We have the resources. How we spend it has been the major problem. What do you do with your money? What people talk about
Prof,
conflicting interests.
Yeah, Prof, thanks. Part of what one is just thinking about, as cholera has been ravaging a number of states in the country, I mean, the question was, why has vaccination not been ramped up? Whom are we waiting for? We say that we are waiting for AstraZeneca, some other thing to come, XYZ for COVID-19, and so on and so forth. And I want to come back to this same whole issue of brain power, institutions, and the environment that Professor Tomori has also included. How do we overcome the current challenges so that the human capital can function? There is no institution that you are looking for that you cannot probably find in Nigeria. How do we make them work? Is it that there's a lot of political interference, or you just have elements, who have no key performance indicators to chase, or what? I mean, at NetPrint, we have your CEO come on Good Morning Nigeria, and I've seen him elsewhere, talk about the challenges that they face, as if, we don't seem to realize the value of these things.
Thank you. Let me add, but please allow me to make a comment on the private sector part that Mazi talked about, because I've always put it on the two legs, that government has its faults, the private sector has its fault too, huge one. The reason is this: the private sector is there as a business component, and its modus is different, and it could be faster, and deliverable can be also faster. But the patriotism that Professor Tomori is talking about, it should be about all of us. And the private sector must take this as a big challenge. Why? I was the national chairman of academic pharmacists in Nigeria, and we undertook a study, and we formed ourselves. Nigerian lecturers were ready to work free of charge to come out of these problems. And I give you, if not that you guys don't allow it, I will call company's name and the name of the person here in this studio now live.
Please don't.
Okay, but this is what the CEO of a big pharma industry in Nigeria told me. He said, Prof, you people will not allow us to rest, that we should do local manufacturing, R&D and all of that. And he gave me a practical example. He said ampicillin, cloxacillin in the pharmacy in Nigeria was between 80 naira to 120 naira if it came from China or India. That is, you as a customer, you have 80 to 120 naira, you buy it and go and use.
On prescription?
Yes. He said the one he attempted to make here in Lagos, that by the time it was ready in his factory to move out of the factory to the pharmacy, it was 480 naira. And he asked me, I know you are a professor, you are not a businessman. Which one will you do? He said, how can I? He said, because by the time his son gets to the pharmacy, it will no longer be 480. And that the one that came from China or India is 80 to 120 naira. That which one will they take? And that's where government is key. Because if we can make it here, it should not come in here. And if we want to say, okay, we are part of WTO, we are part of anything that we have signed, that thing did not say that it should not impose tariff in a way that will encourage local drug production. That is on that. Number two, in terms of patriotism, you see, for any misbehavior, where I come from, the village I come from is called Agaliga. That village, there is no hospital. But people that are dying in the town, there are more than people dying in my village. So all this story we are even talking about in town is for Abuja, Port Harcourt, and Lagos people, because the people in my village, they don't have hospital and they are not dying. So But the point I'm taking from there, trying to define here, is this. Now, if the people in the village are not dying, they are doing something, what are they doing? Okay. Our responsibility...
Go ahead.
Our responsibility as scientists who have been nurtured by the tax of the people of this nation is now to apply science and technology to those things they are doing in the village and make them available in a form that is more stable, durable, efficacious, and safe. And that is what China does
Professor
to its people. I have not finished.
No, we'll please just hold it. We'll just take a short break. And when we come back, you'll conclude your thoughts.
Ceasefire.
Aggressive response from the very beginning. If you remember the very first case in Nigeria, very well contained, very few infections arose from that. We started airport screenings and temperature checks way before anyone really understood what was going on. On the front lines of the response, the team here at the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, supported all the 36 states. At some point, we had teams in 32 of our 36 states concurrently, leading the response, the emergency operations centers, making sure we're getting the surveillance data, building up our information resources on our website. Our website became one of the most visited websites on the continent, as many other African countries were looking to the leadership Nigerians provided. At our Incident Coordination Center, people were working literally 14, 15 hours every single day.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Give your kids winning energy. Milo Active Go. With the goodness of malts, milk, and cocoa, helps them make the most of every day. Milo, the energy to go further.
Dear compatriots, our country can be as great as we want.
Let us all commit ourselves to its greatness.
We must be willing to set aside our differences, unite and stay as one.
In our expansive landmass, human and material resources, and plurality lies our strength.
Let our challenges lead us to rediscover our common ground, and together, let's find solutions.
This will take some time, so it requires patience, tolerance, and forgiveness from every one of us.
Let all hands come on deck to protect and transform our country.
Let us unite and see each other not as adversaries, but as brothers and sisters.
Together, we can build a better Nigeria for ourselves and for the next generations.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA, with support from Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Two entertaining sides will be looking to get the results when they meet at Ellen Road. Who will come out on top? This Saturday, it's Leeds United versus Wolverhampton Wanderers on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA, Silverbird Television and Sporty.com from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu, empowered by Integral.
Welcome back, and still Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Professor Oyewale Tobori and Martin Emeje, they're still with us in the Abuja studios. Earlier, we signed off Mazi Samuel. Back to Professor Emeje, taking up from where you left off, in terms of seeking to maximize our R&D. Well, the analogy you gave with regard to the economics of importation and local production, that's one aspect. But in terms of funding R&D, when we had Ebola 7 years ago, ZMAP was a small private entity in the US that came up with our research. Now, how much private capital are we seeing in R&D? And I'm asking this question because, again, part of what we hear is when you have multinational corporations, they will prefer R&D to be funded and undertaken in their headquarters in the metropolis rather than in the local environment where they are operating. But we have a plenitude of other areas that we can focus on. in terms of scientific and medical research, what can we do to make it more attractive to private capital, especially private capital in Nigeria that seems always to be chasing hot money? Everyone quick results, quick returns, and so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you. Please allow me to take it from where I stopped because I have struggled not to forget it. I was saying that, you see, in my village growing up, and my father is still alive, he's at home, if you saw 500 naira note on the road while you are going to farm and you picked it up, you will regret ever carrying that money from the road because it's not your own. So we grew up knowing that if you take what is not your own, you are a thief. And when it comes to relating with families, including marriage, they will say that family, they steal in that family. People will run away from such families. But today we are calling stealing, corruption, money laundering. We are giving it different kind of fine names. So people who are thieves no longer feel that they are doing anything wrong. I'm responding to the fact of patriotism and the fact that many of these, including some scientists, are misbehaving even in institutions, right? So if we, for example, decide to even use judiciously the little resources that we have in our establishments, we will go a long way. We did not have increase in budget, for example, at NIPRID before we decided to go to all the states of the Federation to go and train traditional medical practitioners. Because whether we like it or not, no matter how we feel that we know everything, it is these traditional medical practitioners that are in the villages attending to our people first. So they must, and half education like is worse than not even knowing at all. So we had to do that. Now, in terms of capital investment by the private industry, that's why I brought up the issue earlier. As many of us today who are very proud of our country and have refused to go and live in other countries will tell you that our thesis, our postgraduate studies were funded by private industries, international private industries, but the result belongs to them. The result belongs to them. So they develop products that are in the market today. So as long as we are, the private industry is not also ready to drive research, because they must drive research. You must say, okay, we have over 300 research institutions in Nigeria. That's institutes and universities, right? And the academics are on their own doing research to get publication and become professors and fulfilled, and then try and begin to fly to Abuja and Lagos to get appointment, become heavy politicians, no longer scientists or professors, and then they are the ones that are very attractive to government, and the decay continues that way. But if the industry were to be, and this is without prejudice to the problems that they have, like I have mentioned one, if an industry says, this university, or NIPRID, for example, we want a product on malaria and we are dropping 10 million naira. Then that ab initio, everybody knows that this is the industry that funded this study at NIPRID. The product belongs to that industry. The industry, because the industry is competent in the marketing, in production and marketing, it will follow it up. Like the AstraZeneca Oxford. AstraZeneca is a company. It is the industry that partnered with the university. So the product belongs to AstraZeneca technically. It's in the market with it. There is nothing like procurement, go and do tender so that all the companies will come and bid. Then some people who are very powerful will determine which company will win that tender. Then we will be on the surface claiming that we are doing open anything. When we know that we even supported the most unqualified company to go and win that bid. But if we are ready to move our country forward, we don't even need anybody to go and be doing any bidding. If you provided the resources for this, then you will be responsible for the outcome of that research. You drive it. And these are the kind of things that we package as an institution. That's why I told you earlier that what we are doing now, the kind of contextual package that we are putting in place now is such that it is not just about R&D progress, but that is going to drive the science of regulation, what we call regulatory science. Do you understand? That is so that we can have even proactive regulatory issues. Let me tell you, until 1991, all plants were like normal nutritional supplements in the United States of America. It took the Congress of the United States of America to make a law that no, certain plants, even if it has not been converted into a pharmaceutical tablet, that what we call dosage form, even as a plant, it is a drug. So we have a huge role and things to do that we can do, but those ones that we cannot do, it is the private sector that should drive it because it has a huge business component. Because while health is social service, there's also the business component of it because it is capital intensive. And government, we do not expect that government alone will always provide these resources. So the private sector that is going to go to market, that is responsible for all of it and doing business, should be ready to also put in resources. If you tell them, in fact, the surviving pharmaceutical industries in Nigeria, let anyone come and tell me that they are not contractors to government.
You are the head of R&D in NIPRID.
Yes.
Where is NIPRID in all of this?
Where is NIPRID or where should NIPRID be?
No, where is NIPRID?
Where is NIPRID? Where you should situate us is that research and development in pharmaceutical R&D in Nigeria should actually be coordinated by NIPRID. It should. So, because what we do, we step up from basic research for development, where we do proof of concept. Now, at the level of proof of concept where prototypes are developed, it is now ready for the entrepreneur to come take for commercial production. We have a pilot plant scheme at the Institute. In fact, we have the first API pilot plant outfit in this country. But it is not functioning because it is not supported by either the industry or government. But so we blame government.
What are you guys doing?
That is API. I'm telling you what should be done now. Yeah. Now, and I've told you earlier what we do. As we are talking now, we have at least 10 products for 10 different disease areas that the industry is supposed to take to the market. We are not the ones to go to the market. Number one, we are not competent in marketing. That's not our area. We don't claim to know what we don't know. So the industry should come and do it. How did sickle cell drug? How did sickle cell drug get to the market? Because a foreign company came to take it to the market. Eventually, it failed. Today, May and Baker has taken it to the market. So if you go to the market, you see sickle cell drug. It's NIPRID, but you won't find NIPRID name on it. The remaining 12, it is the industry that's supposed to come and take. A pharmaceutical industry from Lagos came for our malaria drug because we have a malaria product from our natural resources that compete with ACT. When it was time for the company to take it, the company said no, that this is a government institution, that we should give it to them free of charge and is not under obligation to pay anything. This is a mentality of the company.
Are you getting the attention you need from government?
What define the attention? No, because it is yes and no. Because I cannot say no because I work there and paid salary. Government pays my salary. So it cannot be a no. I cannot say yes because what government should do is not doing it enough. Okay. In fact, since I joined NIPRID for almost 20 years now, this year is the first time that I heard the word billion in NIPRID. It's the first time. I thought all those monies when they call. I usually say, is this true that this money actually exists? In fact, when I heard that people were dropping 40 million in the airport and running away, I said they should just give us now because we don't need more than 10 million naira to take a product out. We don't need more than 10 million. Now, somebody is running away from 40 million. Why don't you just give it to us?
Okay, Professor Major, thank you very much. Times have changed. Hearing billion now for the first time. Yeah. Justice Ovie Whiskey, who was chairman of FEDECO, did say that if he saw a million naira in those days, it would collapse. Professor Tomori, well, how do we work out the linkage between the gown and the town? Again, this is part of it. I mean, as indicated, you are not necessarily experts in marketing. you are not experts in funding. I doubt, because I tend to follow it, when you are having all these economic meetings and summits and progresses, I've never seen you there. I don't remember seeing any of the top researchers or scientists to recognize that, look, this is an area we are neglecting. And if, therefore, they don't recognize this, how do we open that avenue to them to know that property covers intellectual property as well? Prof.
People make the difference. The kind of people in charge of those places make all the difference we're talking about. And if you put the wrong person in the charge of a place, you're not going to get any good thing out of it. As he said, there's a limit to which I know. I must recognize that. We as scientists, I think we have a little bit of problem of getting our message across to industry. That's also part of the problem. I mean, speaking a language they understand is something we had to learn. They don't teach us that. Over the years, you begin to learn that. And remember, the statement, what is in it for me, is a legitimate question. It's only we bastardize this in Nigeria. What is in it for me? I mean, you can't go into any business without asking, what am I gaining from it? So it is in our position to be able to go down to those industries and say, this is what is in it for you. If you do this, this is what is going to come out. And that message, I think that dialogue must be there. But as he said also, the other side, I mean, quick returns, all those kind of things. All the examples we gave about this. Look at what happened in India. We visited many years ago. A lot of the teachers in this country were Indians. They're all gone back to their country. The government created an environment. We visited a place where they call it genetic village or gem village, I can't remember. Already, everything was sent there. The roads were made. The buildings were there, water supply was in place, all that, and all the call their people back was come in and establish something. If you establish this one, we give you this rebate. If you do this, we give you that rebate. If you do that, we give you that rebate. If you're going to import something which we are not making, we give you this type of thing. We need such type of thing in this country. It's not for the custom grabbing legitimate and illegitimate resources and making things costlier than what it should be. These are areas. So that I'm saying people in each of the different places, whether in government, in university, all over, we keep talking about patriotism. We keep talking about love for your country. Must be at the back of whatever it is each of us is doing. So we can't blame any one individual. I mean, just like whether executive, legislative, judiciary. Unfortunately, one of the errors we are making, the few people who want to stand up for the country are too afraid to talk. They're afraid for themselves. They're afraid for their family, and they're afraid for this. But then, it's our country. It's not for them alone. I have a right, I have a stake in this country. And that's what I was telling them at the meeting yesterday. I said, I will not stop talking about what we need to do. Even if they asked me whether have I been frustrated. I said, I enjoy frustration. Because it's a stepping stone for me to move on. I'm frustrated by legislators, I'm frustrated by the executive, but I'm not going to give up. I keep telling them that this is where we're going. As I mentioned the word that we had utopia in this country. Call whatever you describe as a utopia. That was my utopia. Give the generation that we have now, they are smarter than my generation. Give them 1/4 of the environment I had. This country will be transformed.
Prof, I'd like to ask you, just before we end, I'd like to ask you, you're chairman of Biovaccines Limited, and Nigeria is the highest malaria-burdened country. Why did we play second fiddle, if we played anything at all, in the emergence of a malaria vaccine?
We didn't even play any fiddle, so don't talk about second or third. There are certain things I mentioned. Clinical trials were one of the first things that he did. All of these studies were done in Mali, in parts of other African countries, Tanzania, all those ones. Because there they had all those basic environment to do clinical trials. And that's part of your contribution. You know the sad thing, the clinical trials on Lassa fever, it's been done in Lassa fever vaccine. It's been done in Ghana. Ghana has 5 cases of Lassa fever every year. We have thousands. Why are they not coming here? The environment. I keep talking about environment, people don't understand. The man who wants to do clinical trials, he wants to come in here. By the time he goes through the approval to get that through NAFDAC or through that one, all the people are dead. In Ghana, they go through within a short period of time. They got all the approval they get. So that's why I'm talking about the fact that we all have a role to play. For the sake of the country, let's not be a stumbling block, because you are in a position, and then you misuse that position for your own safety. I talk about national interest, self-interest, overriding national interest. That's where the problem is. If we all love this country, and we play for this country, we will make the necessary thing that we need to do.
Professor Emeje.
Can I say something about that?
Which, about that we played no fiddle at all?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, there's no contention about that we played no fiddle at all. But I was talking about proactive regulatory science and the fact that we should be driving that. Professor Tomori may not agree with me on this, but I will say it. You see, we have the facilities for clinical trial.
To malaria?
For any disease that is here.
Disease.
You know the most important facility? Our medical doctors. Who gave our medical doctors the protocol for handling COVID-19 in this country? You think they did not do well?
Excellent.
Okay. What is clinical trial? Is it not that the summary for a layman to understand? Clinical trial is that, unlike taking your medicine and going home, this one, you take your medicine and the health personnel will be monitoring you. So, we have the facilities. We are the reason the people who are making those products are not coming here for clinical trial. Then, because they know that the type of facilities they see in other places we don't have, they now use it against us. Then instead of us to use what we have against them, we are not using it. And what should they use? If you make a malaria vaccine in this world, the greatest market for it is Nigeria. We will say we will not use it. Prof gave example now of how India told UK, you don't want to accept our vaccine, but we are not accepting your own. Why do you think they subpedaled? You think it's because India can bomb them? It is market. We are the market for malaria. You make a drug for malaria, we will sit down in our country, regulatory, we will say we are not using it. Nigeria will take a decision. You have made malaria medicine should not come here
vaccine
until it is studied here. Then, if it means that company will come here and build the type of facility they are talking about, they should build it and do the clinical studies here. Yeah. Why should they tell us that we don't have facility? We have.
Okay. Professor Emeje, thanks. Professor Tomori, I know you want to respond, but there's something that I would also like you to clarify. Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, was set up primarily to assist poor countries. Why do we keep interjecting ourselves into that category of poor countries?
Yeah, thank you very much. Just also before you talk about it, facility is not a problem. There are regulations, there are rules. And when it takes you 10 years to get approval, that's why they don't come here. So this, just to expatiate on that one.
Professor, I'm sorry, you have to do that in less than 30 seconds.
Gavi, in fact, I remember when I was in Gavi, I asked them, are you there forever? Because the aim is to let country graduate. We graduated. We were told to graduate by 2021. We refused to graduate. So it's back to your country.
Professor Oyewole Tomori, President, Nigeria Academy of Science, and Chairman BioVaccines Nigeria Limited. I'd like to thank you very much for your perspectives. Let me also appreciate Professor Martin Emeje. If we use the word COVID-19, very virulent in his presentation this morning. Head R&D, of course, NIPRIT. Thank you very much, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Yes, we earlier on appreciated Mazi Uhabunwa, who joined us via Zoom. And
that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you for tuning in. The program returns tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, do take care of yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
I am Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak. We always appreciate your company and do always join us and connect with us in our fight against rape and rapists. From all the production crew, bye-bye.